key proposals within the tax ambit, what we're expecting from the budget. Thank you so much for taking time out and joining in. Just give us a sense as to what the expectation is this time around when it comes to if we start off by talking about the salary limits in order to expand tax benefits, what is it that you're penciling in on that front?
Well, I think the budget comes at the backdrop of the pandemic, which has, of course, caused both grief to the fiscal situation of the government, plus it has also impacted consumer spending. So one of the aspects that the government will be very keenly looking at is how does it bring the confidence of the consumers back to move into the spending mode. And one such measure could be by having some amount of relaxations in relation to personal taxes. So we do hope that some of the surcharges and cess could get alleviated in this budget. That said, the anxiety which is there is that the government's elbow room to carry out any tax giveaways is quite limited. So we do expect that at a certain slab rate, which could be in the about 10 lakh range, we could see some amount of concessions being made, but broadly the government would like to stick to its tax rates. That said, I think it's also important to note that when you look at the corporate tax rates which are there, India did moderate its corporate tax rates last year quite significantly. So today, if we look at our corporate tax rates, which are sort of vary between 17 to 25%, depending on the nature of business that you are in. Well, these are very, very competitive tax rates, given that the global average of corporate tax rates is today about 23, 24%. So on the corporate tax side, we are certainly competitive, and I think some amount of tax giveaways at the middle class segment or the salary segment could be very beneficial for the stimuli package for the government.
Right, and in terms of the indirect taxes as well, what do you see by way of proposals coming in order to make the overall environment a lot more conducive?
I think the big change on indirect taxes is the country moved to GST 3 years ago. So in that respect, the GST is now a subject matter of the GST Council, which has a prerogative to bring about tax reforms or changes in the rates, etc. But no doubt the union budget and the union government has a key influence on this. I think there are two things which people are anticipating and hoping for. One is that with the buoyancy in the GST collections, which we are seeing, and we all are hoping that that is a precursor to better times. The first thing is that will the government start making announcements to roll in some of the products which are not within GST to be brought within the GST net, for example, natural gas or ATF and so forth, so that it becomes a part of the credit chain for GST, and it has its then ripple effect into how those sectors are able to take credits and so forth. That's one. The second is the government would continue to try and encourage the GST Council towards moderating some of the GST rates as more and more sectors come into the working of the GST. So I think on indirect taxes, one is the GST part, which sits with the GST Council. The second is, as the previous speaker spoke about, the custom duty rates, that's still a prerogative of the central government, and the custom duty rates is something which the government could try and alleviate some of the inverted duty structures that exist for some of the sectors. Simultaneously, government could try and see as to which are the places where it needs to build custom barriers, if at all, to try and give impetus to the Atmanirbhar Bharat program. So we do have moderately high custom rates, but some of the corrections in the inverted duty structure could certainly be looked at.
Okay, hi Mr. Chaudhri, this is Mubina as well joining into the conversation. I was reading one of your reports on what the pre-budget expectations are
for foreign investors, and I think there's a lot over there. So do you think that the current tax regime is conducive to attract foreign investors? I mean, there was that big blow that came in when that surcharge was imposed for the super rich, which in turn spooked FPIs, but then that was to a certain extent overturned and tweaked. There are still many incomes earned by FPIs that are charged at an extremely high rate. So how are you looking at the overall tax regime for foreign investors, and where do you believe tweaks are necessary?
So 2 points. One is the point that foreign investors, like any investors, do not like uncertainties. And therefore, any surprises that come, sometimes when they're inadvertent surprises, like you referred to the impact on the surcharges 2 years ago, those are very unfortunate because they have consequences of disturbing the stability of the investment that has been planned by the investor community. And it's important that we have certainty and stability in our tax regime. And I think some of the aspects which the government did is to try and bring out various discussion forums to be able to discuss and debate tax changes before they arrive. So I think the only place where we anticipate some amount of tweaks could happen is in relation to digital tax. That the reason being that there is a global debate on how the digital economy needs to be taxed, and India has already brought in an equalization levy, and India is also a key participant in the discussions with the OECD on the Pillar 1, Pillar 2 concepts. So the question really will be, will India start putting in the taxing frameworks, which will be required at a point of time when India adopts the same mechanisms as provided by the OECD. I hope India does not jump the gun to bring out any interim taxing mechanisms for the digital economy, but works its way towards the globally accepted norms on taxing the digital economy. So that's one part. The second part, which has, still carries a bit of a bad taste in the mouth, is the government's decision to continue to litigate on the Vodafone and the Kane disputes, which went into our international arbitration. I think I fully respect the sovereign right of the government to continue to debate these issues. But I think one of the aspects that it does is that the prolonged litigation does raise the question on whether India is offering a stable business environment to investors. So I think if India was to bring to a close this overhang of this litigation, which does not belong to this government, it actually precedes this government. But if this government is able to bring those to amicable close, then I think it will go a long way in assuring investors that India will follow the rule of law and will be welcoming to investors.
Mr. Chaudhri, I really appreciate you giving us your time today to just give us a precursor on what we can expect from direct taxes, indirect taxes from Budget 2021. I think, yes, like Mr. Chaudhri said, what the taxation framework is going to be like, or rather, will India introduce a taxation framework for the digital economy, will be very, very crucial. All right, well, let's move ahead from the budget to earnings. L&T Info